We need to talk about the Second Amendment.
So I don't think you even need to talk about the Second Amendment.
Even though this guy says we shouldn't talk about the Second Amendment.
So I don't think you even need to talk about the Second Amendment. I think people just need to agree that these guns shouldn't be sold.
Well,
the
you
ammunition.
need to talk about the Second Amendment. I mean, it's a big conversation.
No, because people can have guns. You can have guns. The brick has a right to have guns. You just can't have these guns anymore.
Well, this is Pete Dominic, and the amount of nonsense and idiocy that spews out of this guy's mouth as he discusses the Second Amendment on the Joe Rogan podcast makes you question what kind of drugs he's on or if he's just trolling the audience. But this guy's being serious. He claims that nobody thought people have the right to guns until 2008 when the Heller case was decided by the Supreme Court.
The Second Amendment has been interpreted wrong by the Supreme Court, in my opinion. I mean, it doesn't say that people should have, until 2008, it didn't say that. Nobody thought that people should have a personal right to guns till the Heller case.
Nobody thought people had the right to guns until the Heller case. Guys, you don't have the right to keep and bear arms because of the Second Amendment. We have the Second Amendment because we have the right to keep and bear arms. If there was no Second Amendment, if there was no Constitution, do you think anybody has the right to keep you from keeping and bearing arms? We all know what the answer to that is. You don't have to give a reason to anyone why you own a gun. You have an unalienable right to protect yourself by whatever means you want to protect yourself from violent aggressors. You can use it for hunting. You could use it for fishing if you want. You don't owe anybody a reason why you possess a firearm. And that doesn't take away from the fact that you have the right to keep and bear arms. And that right shall not be infringed. There's no interpretation necessary on this, but this guy's not done with his nonsense.
Even if you made guns illegal, even if you said you can't have any bullets, you'll all go to jail. There's so many guns. You're not getting them all. It's not possible. There's more guns than there are people, which means there's more than 30 million guns
there are
in this country alone.
It's absolutely the most important point in the discussion.
That's a nutty number, man. You really stop and think about that number. You're like, what? Is that real?
But you don't really stop the behavior by necessarily creating certain laws about why someone might behave a certain way and shoot people. That's not going to necessarily change. What you do is you do limit the access to certain types of weapons and rounds of ammunition, right?
And how do you do that, Pete? By writing laws. And how do you enforce those laws, Pete? Oh, that's right, at the barrel of a government gun. So what a gun law is the opinion of a politician backed by force, or in the terminology of the left, backed by government-sanctioned gun violence. So Pete is actually for gun violence as he argues against certain kinds of weapons in the hands of Americans.
Well, the real question is, why would someone do that, right? That's the number one question. Like limiting,
it's a harder question. It's a harder question to answer. The easier question to answer is make them less accessible.
Yes, if
to people who have problems that we can't figure out or solve.
Make them less accessible by force, and then who gets to acquire more power over everybody else? Oh, the people who used government guns to force you out of your guns. Now the balance of power shifts. Now you have less power and the government has more power. And the whole reason the Second Amendment was even written is to keep tyrannical governments in check.
Dude, I've shot guns. I shoot guns. I get I have nothing but respect for hunters. I grew up in a hunting community. But I don't know. I don't think that there's much past the conversation about accessibility to guns that can fire that many rounds that quickly, killing that many people. I don't think we have to get rid of those somehow. But I agree. How do you do it?
Yeah, that's the question.
That's the most important point. There's already 330. There's more guns than there are people. So what do you do? So by the way, I think you buy as many as you can back for sure. You spend a whole bunch of taxpayer money. Just help. By the way, there's a ton of people in a bind right now that have a rifle, but like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to afford my insulin. Let me get rid of this AK-47 to live another month. You buy some guns back. It's a good expenditure of money.
Yeah, let's have the government steal more money from the American tax cattle to fund a gun buyback Australian style, and then write laws to criminalize certain Americans who decide to possess certain guns, thereby promoting more government-sanctioned gun violence. Way to go, Pete.
And then melt them down and turn them into furniture for people.
So if you wanted to do that without changing the Second Amendment, like you just have a buyback where you just offer people the opportunity to make some money by giving their guns up.
Well, the Second Amendment has been interpreted wrong by the Supreme Court, in my opinion. I mean, it doesn't say that people should have, until 2008, it didn't say that. Nobody thought that people should have a personal right to guns till the Heller case.
Yet nobody thought that Americans or any human being has a right to guns until 2008, when the black-robed tyrants of the Supreme Court told us, hey, we've interpreted the Second Amendment for you. Hats off to us.
So I don't think you even need to talk about the Second Amendment. I think just people just need to agree that these guns shouldn't be sold.
Well,
the
you
ammunition.
need to talk about the Second Amendment. I mean, it's a big conversation.
No, because people can have guns. You can have guns. The Rick has a right to have guns. You just can't have these guns anymore.
Well,
Pete Dominick is a bootlicking, leather-munching, government-loving slave sitting on the plantation, wanting his government to write more laws to keep him more safe, to which Benjamin Franklin would say, those who want to give up a little essential liberty for politically promised security deserve neither liberty nor security. What would old Ben Franklin say about Pete Dominick?
Those ones. You can have all these guns.
Regional restrictions anywhere, right? Like
and they
in New
work.
York City, you can't have a handgun.
Yeah, they work.
Right?
You can't even. I don't think you can have you can have a switchblade in New York City. Yeah, Cyrus Vance, the DA there, is like terrified that they're changing. The federal government is changing the law because he knows that those gun laws in New York work really well.
They work to do what, Pete? They work to disempower honest, hardworking, non-criminal Americans, while those same gun laws empower criminals who don't obey laws. So the government's got the guns and the street criminals have the guns, but the people who want to protect themselves with those guns are criminalized by the laws in New York. Bottom line, Pete wants you treated as a criminal if you have a personal protection device in your possession in New York. So yeah, those gun laws work.
People always make the argument, well, they have those gun laws in Chicago and there's a ton of violence. That's because Chicago's on the border of Indiana. It doesn't have them. Guns go across the border just fine.
Then why doesn't Indiana have the same kind of gun violence that Chicago has if all the guns are coming from Indiana?
That's the gun laws work. They work.
Well, Chicago is also in the middle of a bitter drug war.
Well, yeah, I mean that's where the violence is coming from. But people should have less accessibility to those types of guns, like every other.
So he wants laws written by politicians to create an atmosphere of less accessibility for you, which is called, let's see, what's it called in the Second Amendment? Oh, that's right. It's called an infringement, Pete.
Civil society in the world. Come on, this is like.
But it goes back to what you were talking about before, like that drugs, if they were legal, you wouldn't have that sort of a drug war.
Right, for sure, it's the root of most of the violence in the inner cities and obviously in Mexico. Yeah, it's black markets, it's the illicit drug.
So Pete is arguing for more laws which would create more crime and the black markets and more people getting shot and killed, while claiming that we need more gun laws that will keep more people safe. That is a special kind of stupid.
Yeah, they're making tons of money on that.
What is the Second Amendment exactly as it's written?
The right to bear arms shall not be infringed.
It is pitiful that Joe Rogan doesn't know what the Second Amendment is. It's only 27 words. Anybody who cares about gun rights knows every word of the Second Amendment.
So how do you think that the Supreme Court misinterpreted that?
That in the 2008 Heller case, everybody should just, I would plug the work of Eric Siegel, who's
a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Yeah, those commas get argued by constitutional scholars
for days.
Yeah, but the Supreme Court didn't decide until 2008 that Americans had a right to have their own weapon.
That's such a crazy statement. Like when you read it, it's so interesting because we're going back in time, trying to figure out how people in 1776 thought about guns and whether or not that applies to us. Because if it doesn't apply to us, we have to think on 1789.
You know, we don't have to. All you have to do is go through some quotes from the founding fathers and what they thought about guns. As just a few examples, Thomas Jefferson wrote, "The laws that forbid the carrying of arms are laws of such a nature they are not to be found in the laws of a free government. They are found only in the codes of tyrants. No free man shall ever be debarred the use of arms. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants." James Madison said, "The advantage of being armed, which the Americans possess over the people of almost every other nation, forms a barrier against the enterprises of ambition, more especially in a republic. And a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." George Washington said, "A free people ought not only to be armed, but disciplined, to which end a uniform and well-digested plan is requisite. Firearms stand next in importance to the Constitution itself. They are the American people's liberty teeth and keystone under independence." Samuel Adams wrote, "The Constitution shall never be construed to prevent the people of the United States, who are peaceable citizens, from keeping their own arms." Patrick Henry said, "Guard with jealous attention the public liberty. Suspect everyone who approaches that jewel. Unfortunately, nothing will preserve it but downright force. Whenever you give up that force, you are ruined." The great object is that every man be armed. Everyone who is able may have a gun. John Adams said, "Arms in the hands of citizens may be used in individual discretion, in private self-defense, or in defense against oppression." George Mason wrote, "To disarm the people is the best and most effectual way to enslave them." The bottom line is that Pete Dominick wants people enslaved, and he wants the government to do the enslaving.
We're going back in time, trying to figure out how people in 1776 thought about guns and whether or not that applies to us. Because if it doesn't apply to us, we have to think on 1789. If it doesn't apply to us, we have to think, well, then who gets to decide? Like one of the reasons
we get to decide as a society on any of these things.
One of the reasons why it's so interesting.
Is what I want to believe.
One of the reasons why it's so interesting to read these things is like we have, for whatever reason, when things get written into stone or carved into a stone or written onto a document, like the First Amendment, like the freedom of expression, we have it. So we all agree on it.
Freedom of speech.
We don't want to change it. Freedom of speech, freedom of expression, whatever.
You don't have it because you agree on it. You have it because you have it. If you have it, everybody else has it. You have the right to keep and bear arms. Conversely, nobody has the right to keep you from bearing arms.
We want to hold on to that. We want to keep it.
Sure.
Like this is our law.
All humans do.
And the Second Amendment, the right to have a gun. That's our law. We got it written down. Look, it's written there. So they'll study these ancient words like scrolls. Like they go over these scrolls and look at the commas and look at the words.
Yeah.
Shall not be infringed upon. What did they mean? That's fascinating. It
is fascinating, but I think that they didn't mean this, Joe. I think that
how could they? They didn't know what this is.
They didn't. And
they absolutely did mean this. They were of the mind of, if the government has those weapons, then the people need those weapons. So that if the government becomes tyrannical, oppressive, evil, you can resist them by force, according to Patrick Henry.
The whole gun thing is a racket to make money. That's what that is. It's a way you sell fear. Like, home invasion is any family's worst fear.
The gun industry is a racket to make money. A racket is being dishonest. If a manufacturer produces a weapon or a tire or a vehicle or a sewing machine In a free market, you have the right to voluntarily buy that item. And then once you possess that item, you have the ability to sell that item to someone else. That is not a racket. That's the free market. What is a racket is what he suggests, that the government get together and write laws and condemn a whole bunch of people and treat them as though they were criminals for merely possessing weapons that the government doesn't want them to possess. And make no mistake, the government is highly incentivized to tell you what guns and ammunition you can't possess, and they will make sure they use force against you if they catch you with them. That is a racket, Pete.
But it doesn't happen very much, nor does kidnapping, nor do a lot of these crimes that all my our generation of parents is helicopter parents, terrified of everything, not...
That's true. That's true.
Not letting their kids go outside.
You're right.
Come on. Thinking that your kid's going to get kidnapped, you don't know anybody.
Okay.
It rarely happens, so you obviously don't need a gun. Motorcycle accidents rarely happen, so you obviously don't need a helmet. Car accidents rarely happen. With all the people on the road, the chances of you getting into a car accident, there's hardly any with all the successful travel we have. So you don't need a seatbelt. House fires hardly ever happen, so you don't need a fire extinguisher. That's Pete's argument right there. Home invasions hardly ever happen, so you don't really need a gun. You have the right to be prepared and own anything that you want to own without restriction shall not be infringed.
Who had their kid kidnapped?
But you're generalizing, because home invasions do happen sometimes.
Right, but that's not how we should make laws.
But we don't have to exist like everybody's going to kidnap your kid or everyone's going to break into your home.
But I'm saying
the balance is that sometimes it's real. That's why people want to be able to have guns, because sometimes someone can break in your house, and people have defended their house and their property with guns.
Sure, but is it a realistic threat, or is it something that the gun industry creates these amazing ads and scares the shit out of people?
Oh, come on, man. Crime is real.
It doesn't matter if it's real. It doesn't matter if it's not. Your right to keep a firearm does not end where Pete's fears begin.
Whether they
crime
make
is real,
ads or
it's
not,
certainly
crime
real.
is still real.
I think the clear point is the reason why we have so many guns in America is because there's so much money to be made off of them. I think we could absolutely limit them and regulate them and have a thoughtful conversation. I think that's where most people are at, although I hate that generalization.
We need to limit them. Who's going to limit it, Pete? The government. Do you trust the government, Pete? So how is the government going to limit it? Oh, that's right. They're going to use their guns and point them at you and tell you that you need to be disarmed. That's what you want, Pete.
Everything costs money. That's why you have to pay taxes. Paying taxes is the price of civilization.
Paying taxes. Nobody pays taxes. They're taken from you. They're stolen from you by the barrel of a government gun again. If you want to talk about a racket, that is a racket.
The main issue is definitely the guns and the bullets in them.
Well, the main issue is the person that's capable of shooting people with the guns and the bullets.
No, it's the guns and the bullets.
The guns and the bullet are inanimate objects. Without a person pulling the trigger, we're talking nonsense here. They're not going to just shoot themselves. The main problem is someone who's willing. The main problem is someone who's willing to grab the gun and shoot people. Right? We agreed. We both agree. There's problems with having guns.
No,
but don't you think the main problem is the person who actually shoots people?
I think that in every other country in the world, they don't have this problem because they don't have the gun. That's where I start and end on the argument.
Okay.
Look at this guy. This guy is glazed over. He has no ability to comprehend what's going on. He doesn't know the difference between right and wrong. He wants to empower the government and disempower the people. Leave your thoughts about this for the world and the global thought police in the comment section below. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification icon, give it a thumbs up, share it with everybody you know, and I will see you in the next video.